From foundation to rooftop, Romance got you covered.
And the first thing I want to do, because a lot of you don't recognize these names, I'm going to have each one of the panelists give a minute and a half, 2-minute synopsis about themselves and their company so you understand the supply part of it. We also have on this table, we have the folks from Romac Truss, Windows and Garage Doors. They're going to give a brief synopsis, and then we're going to go deep into it. So I'll start with Don Viscio.
Good morning. Glad to be here. My name is Don Viscio. I'm the general manager of BlueLinx Corporation. I currently manage our Miami, Tampa, Lakeland locations, as well as our export sales and operations. To give you an idea of the scope of our business, last year we shipped out over 7,000 truckloads of material into Central and South Florida, and my businesses represent about $220 million. I've been with my company 32 years. The last 25 I've been managing in Florida. BlueLinx Corporation is a $4.3 billion organization, and we manage over 50 distribution centers. We sell products ranging from concrete reinforcing accessories to roof vents and everything in between, with the exception of doors and windows. I leave that to my good friend Greg.
And Don and I go back over 20 years, and this next guy we go back over 20 years, Greg Terlep from Huttig Building Products.
Jed? Okay. Hi, Greg Terlep with Huttig Building Products, and we have 4 locations in Florida, 28 across the country. I'm responsible for 2 in Florida, 1 in Davenport, which is about 45 minutes south of here, and 1 in Jacksonville. We ship in Florida specifically anywhere from Key West up to Jacksonville, over to Panama City, and then even up into Georgia as north of Savannah. And we'll provide products such as interior doors, exterior doors, any component for a door shop. We also handle multiple millwork products such as moldings and jams, HB&G columns, Marwin stairways, AZEK decking products, as well as Huttig grip fasteners packaged in bulk. And then we also do some value-added products such as pre-finished exterior doors for the new construction and repair remodel. So I want to say thanks for having us. This is a great event, and I look forward to talking to any of you afterwards if you want to have any questions. Thanks.
Next is Julie Condy from PrimeSource Building Corporation.
Good morning. I am with PrimeSource Building Products. Been in the market 29 years, solely in Florida and export. I've led the sales teams, managed the facilities, and now in business development, quarterbacking that for the rest of the country. We are a $2.6 billion company with 3 recent acquisitions, so we're growing into different markets. We have 34 locations nationwide with strategically placed hubs throughout the country. We import 2,500 to 3,000 containers a month. So it's big business for us for sure.
Next is Jarrod Myers from Great Southern. Jarrod and I have known each other 15 years probably, but I've known his boss, Jimmy Rain, for 43 years probably. Great Southern is one of the institutes in the South.
Good morning. I've been down in Florida for about a decade. Been with Great Southern for 17 years, better known as Yellowwood to most people in this room. We're a leading manufacturer of treated lumber products. We're actually based in Florida, right over here in Sumter County. We also distribute building materials such as AZEK, TimberTech. We have our own line of fasteners and stain. We stretch out west to Texas, all the way up to New York, and kind of fill in every gap in between. We have a thriving export and import business as well. We have acquired several sawmills over the last 3 to 5 years. We've actually built a sawmill as recently as 2 years ago. Seems pretty prophetic at this point. A lot of those things were in the works before all this happened, but happy to be here. Appreciate you guys having us, and I'm actually anxious to hear a lot of feedback from everybody else in this room, not just what we have to say, but honestly speaking, what you all have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Jarrod. And our final panelist is Jim Kerkvliet. I got it right this time. He's the owner and CEO of Parliment, and that's been in the last year and a half, 2 years. But you have extensive background in the steel industry.
Thanks, Don. And my name, Jim Kerkvliet. I've been married 35 years, and my wife just finally figured out how to say it, so it's okay. As Don said, I am the owner of Parliment Building Products. Parliment Building Products is a two-step distributor that's been in the marketplace for roughly 20 years. My partner and I, Marcelo Canosa, good friends with Chuck Parliment, the previous owner, we bought the business from Chuck roughly about a year ago. Parliment Building Products is based out of Jacksonville, Florida. We're not the same scope or size of any of these guys. We're the small, intimate little player. We have 5 acres, roughly 55,000 square feet. We have 8 tractor trailers and a short bed that serve into Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. We serve primarily the lumber yards, precasters, brick and block yards, and the roofing houses. And want to thank Don and the team for putting this on together and having a discussion about what is an ever-changing market.
Thank you. We're going to immediately dive into it. Don Viscio, we've had a lot of discussions the last 2 years. We're going to ask the same questions for everybody. Give us a synopsis of your major supply chain disruptions and pressure points you're seeing at BlueLinx Building.
Well, it's pretty simple. If you look at housing starts over the last dozen years, if we rewind five years from 2007 on, we built roughly 690,000 houses a year. For the next 7 years, we built about 1.2 million. Since the back half of 2020, we're running at a pace of 1.6 million to 1.7 million. So there just isn't enough supply to keep up with current demand. It's pure and simple. During that time of lower housing levels, there was consolidation and rationalization of capacity. And the easy question is, well, why don't we just crank those mills back up? They don't exist anymore. The mills are sold off. The people are gone. To invest in those businesses to get back to that capacity level will take greater than 2 years. A perfect example is we went to buy some forklifts because our business is good like everyone's. In order to get forklifts, there's a 30-week wait for electric lifts and a 52-week wait for propane lifts. So if I need to go get some new forklifts, I've got to wait a year before I can have capacity to increase my business. And that's just one illustration of what's going on. There's huge issues around transportation, and that's not only ocean freight, but trucking, where there aren't enough trucks, there aren't enough drivers. Railroad, where there isn't enough equipment. One of my producers the other day said I'm getting about 30% of the equipment I need to get my lumber shipped coming out of British Columbia. And that's typical. So there just isn't enough to go around when there's 1.6 million housing starts, and there's no short-term solution. So I wish I can tell you next week it's going to be better, but we're in this soup for a while.
Well, let's go in specifically. Right now, you have major issues with LVLs and OSB. Give us a brief overview of the LVLs and OSB market.
Okay. I'll start with LVLs. LVLs are produced with wood veneer, right? If you're peeling wood veneer, there's lots of options. I can make it into plywood. I can make it into birch. I can make it in, well, not birch, but birch plywood. I can make it into LVLs. If I'm peeling veneer, I'm going to sell that to the highest bidder. And when plywood reaches $60, $80, $100 a sheet for sanded plywood, that's a better return. So that would go into LVLs is now going into plywood. And again, the capital intensive nature to increase production is such that it would take years and years to catch up. We're on a tight allocation. We get a specified number of trucks a week. And on my drive up here this morning, I had one of the major producers in Florida, distributors, ask me if I can help them with LVLs, and that call happens once or twice a week. And the answer is no. I've got to be loyal to my existing customers, which Romac is one, because I just don't have enough. And there isn't enough being produced. So, it's really important to align yourself with the right people and product. But at the end of the day, there's just more product being demanded than can be produced in the short term.
And what's your forecast on OSB?
OSB is much in the same boat. A very, very capital-intensive product to manufacture. There isn't enough production in the Southeast. People are substituting plywood at this point. And
see, that's something that people need to understand. All right, that he buys a lot of pine. In the last 3 weeks, 2x12 pine has shot up in price considerably in half-inch CDX. And the reason why people are going back to traditional headers with packs of CDX and pine and that's because you can't get LVLs.
That's correct. So we're having to substitute products and find creative ways to keep job sites moving along.
Okay. Greg Terlep, you probably got some of the worst news to discuss. Greg handles Huttig Building Products is one of the major providers of doors in the state of Florida. Interior and exterior doors have been tough. First, let's go on the easy part. Interior doors have improved. What's the outlook on interior doors?
Yeah, interior doors. So we're Masonite interior door distributor. We're probably their largest customer, and they have done a fantastic job actually through this whole mess the last 2 years. They had their hiccups, as everyone has. They've dealt with the COVID issues, but I have to say, even though they still say we're on allocation, they're great partners in saying, hey, if you need additional capacity, they're able to provide it.
But where are we at on 8.0 doors?
The situation with 8.0 doors is it's more of a lead time issue than it is anything else. It's not really a supply issue there. They had some back order issues due to labor.
So if you're ordering an 8.0 door, what type of lead time issue are you looking at?
Yeah, typically, 3 weeks is typically for a typical order out of the mill, and now it may take 6.
Yeah. So interior doors have improved, a little longer lead times on 8.0s. What about the moldings and jams? Have they improved? I know for most of you, moldings and jams have taken considerable markups in prices lately. Do you see the price increases continue, and how is the supply from South America coming?
Yeah, and we sell interior door components, exterior door components. We sell to door shops who build pre-hungs, who in turn use jams, frames, and those kind of components. And those are the things that really skyrocketed, as well as just the doors themselves as far as price. I mean, over double in the last year. So I'd say the good news is we haven't seen that. Now, they won't commit to not escalating prices in the short term. But from a supply standpoint, the mills are basically at capacity. And if you hadn't had a relationship with these mills prior to COVID, you're not going to get any additional capacity. You're not going to get anything. So that's the first thing. The other thing is what you'll hear from these other folks up here too is ocean space and getting containers overseas. Most product that comes for moldings, jams, frames come overseas. It comes from South America, China, all over the world. And the inconsistency of estimated time of arrival, it just continues to change. We have containers or orders that we place that are over a year old that haven't arrived yet. Now, we have some that have arrived within 3 to 4 months, which is pretty good. So it's the inconsistency, which in turn increases price, right? Because it's a supply-demand issue at the same time.
All right, now let's talk about exteriors. You're a Therma-Tru dealer. And exteriors really is about to have some pressure points. Might as well just go ahead and tell them what the decision by Therma-Tru's been.
All right, when Don asked me to do this, it was a couple weeks ago, and everything was rolling along great with exterior doors. Well, we just learned that allocation for exterior doors, and by the way, we're a Therma-Tru distributor, which is they're a fantastic brand, a fantastic partner of ours. They were rolling along pretty darn good through January and February. We were on allocation, everybody was on allocation, so we could only get a certain amount of door slabs. When you're talking about glass components and things like that, there's no issue there. It's doors, door slabs. They make the door skins, and then they assemble the door slabs. In the past 2 years, they've been running into a lot of supply issues. As you've heard, problems with importing components, and these components then go into the final product that caused delays. They've gotten through that problem. Now at the first of the year, now they've started to run into some serious labor issues, which is not a quick fix, as everybody knows. But at the same time, they made some adjustments. They've had some some back orders, just a pile of backlog.
Like 200,000
200,000 doors.
back ordered.
Okay, so now to put that in perspective, they'll build about 50,000 a week right now. So what they've done, without any notice, but they had to get their arms around this thing, is they had to come out and say, hey guys, we're going to cut your allocation drastically in April. Last week of March and the entire month of April.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the last week of March, Therma-Tru is not taking any orders nationally.
Correct.
And for the month of April, they're cutting allocations 80%.
Correct.
Now,
So, yeah.
now we had this discussion with Therma-Tru. They build 200,000 doors. They're going to catch up on their back orders, but I think they're missing there's 250,000 doors that will be needed in that 5-week period, correct? So how does that really improve?
Yeah, you know, internally we may have conversations. You're kicking the can down the road about, because you still have the demand, right? I mean, everyone's still moving forward. So I think their whole issue right now with labor issues is to really understand what their capacity is. So if they can go and catch up on this backlog first, they've lowered our allocation, right, 80%. Then going into May, they'll have a really good idea of, okay, this is what we can truly produce right now with the manpower we have. And then increase their allocation and then move it from there.
And we need to be clear, 8.0 doors and the internal glass doors have big problems, don't they?
There was some issues in February, March with Craftsman style doors and flush glazed doors.
Yep.
And now there is no restrictions on what we can place orders for now there. The problem is the quantity. So that's good news. If there's any good news out of any of this, it's that. And we really have to, what we really have to do is wait and see what happens around the first week of April when we figure out what our May allocation is going to be from Therma-Tru. Because that'll really tell us, hey, how much progress did you make? Is the plan working? And then we can understand what our allocation is going forward.
But we also need to say something that's all the other door manufacturers are having big issues too.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, you know, I call it whack-a-mole because it's like every day you got something different, right? And now it's just going at a furious pace. It's, you know, you can't keep up with all the moles. But I'd say every manufacturer is going through this. And it may not be specifically labor, but it could be supply on their end. It could be freight on their end.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's enough bad news from you. We need more bad news now. Let me tell you about Julie Condy. She's probably the most glamorous looking one up here, but she sells the most boring products. But she sells the products that if you don't get, you can't make. Julie, PrimeSource and them is a huge importer of fasteners and screws and metal products. She also ISO board, drywall, roofing. Let's first talk about the effects of the imports. What's that's doing to your market, the containers, just dive into it.
So when you hear the word PrimeSource, a lot of you are like, I've never heard that name before, but think about our brands, Grip Right, Pro Twist. We also private label many of the nails that come into the marketplace as well. Factors that are delaying a lot of what's going on here are raw material, ocean freight. Ocean freight, a year ago, importing containers, cost us $3,500 per container. We shortly then watched it go to $7,500 to $10,000 to $15,000 to today it's between $20,000 and $25,000. So let's take, for example, on a box of nails or rebar foundation chairs.
Pull your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, rebar foundation chairs. This could add $10 or $12 a box just in freight, not with raw material going up as well. So we have problems getting containers. Both of these gentlemen spoke about just getting the containers to transport it, labor, port congestion, port delays. These are huge factors. A year, 18 months ago, when we were importing a container for our warehouse or for a customer, the material took 60 to 90 days. I'm going to say that conservatively because it was 90 to 120. Today, it's 7 to 9 months. How do you plan? And Greg has a great point. We forecast for a year at a time, and we forecast with tremendous growth rates. To Don's point, how much have we built in the past year and how much has our businesses accelerated? I have containers on the water that are over a year old. I have containers on the water that are 7 months old that I have no ETA on. And we import from tons of different countries. So it's the same everywhere. It's coming into the United States.
And I know I talked to Tom Coos, your CEO. We had a discussion. He says he sees shortages in like roof nails and such like that because it's just not enough coming in.
Sure. So I want to let everybody know that there are very few domestic nail fastener mills in this country. 25 years ago, we had 3 or 4 that would take 3 or 4 weeks to get material from. Why is that? Some of the coatings on the nails are not EPA approved in this country, and of course labor is a big cost issue. So let's take coral roofing nails, for example. 95% of the world's coral roofing nails are made in China. What does that tell you? The beginning of this year, we had to deal with COVID. Every year we have Chinese New Year. The week prior and the week after, the mills go dark. We had the Olympics. We had the Paralympics. So let's think about this. Out of the region where those Olympic Games were going on, we purchased $110 million worth of fasteners. Right now, they didn't want anybody to see the smog going in the background in these lovely pictures of the Olympics, so they shut the mills down in quadrants with power in China, which delays it even further. But raw material, getting material to come out, we're booking on spot right now, which means this. The broker calls, I can get you a container for $21,000. Do you want it or not? You have 3 minutes. We have to call a customer and, are we doing, this is how crazy it is overseas right now. So we had 2 mills pull off market, something else you should know, for hot galv nails and stainless last night. Jim will speak to nickel going up. Nickel went up 2 days ago, 100% overnight with some mills that we had. When a mill pulls off market and doesn't quote, they could go dark for 2 weeks. They could go dark for 4 weeks. We don't know when they're going to come back on. So that in turn delays lead times coming in for production.
But Julie, I think something, we're talking about nails and fasteners and screws, but tied into all that is masonry foundation material.
Well, if you really want to talk about that, 95% of the world's production on concrete accessories is made in China. We're the largest purveyor of fasteners in the world, and we do a tremendous amount of concrete accessory business, and 4 of us up here do it all. I will tell you that in my experience, I have one customer that all 4 of us could not supply 1 month's supply right now, literally. We have been on allocation for rod shears, bar ties, anchor bolts, washers, tie wire for well over a year. And that's not going to get any better. It's going to tighten up. We import our screws from Taiwan. What's going on between China and Taiwan right now? Drywall screws, concrete accessories, roofing nails. All could be impacted.
Thank you for the good news there.
Sorry.
I know we're going to have good news in Yellow Pine. The price is low and everything's fine, right, Jarrod?
Well, on a relative basis, I feel pretty good about where we're at. Thank you.
You can, right now you can still,
years.
right now you still can get it even though you got to pay for it, huh?
That's right. Yeah, that actually is accurate. I mean, if you go back 2020, of course, when the pandemic hit, That was a totally different environment. I don't think any of us really expected the type of boom that we had. A lot of remodeling and people staying at home. Lumber, quite honestly, at that point just kind of disappeared. I mean, when we couldn't quote things, it just wasn't out there to get, and that's completely abnormal for us. I mean, we're very accustomed to delivering products in 24 to 48 hours. We can turn products. A lot of times we'll buy up from sawmills up in South Georgia. A lot of times we can have them delivered to the plant and then treated and delivered to a customer like Romac, sometimes within 24 hours. So we're very accustomed to chasing it and running inventories up and down with the market. And so when things disappear, it's very abnormal. Where we're at now, it's not that we don't have pockets of items that are tough. 2x12s are extremely challenging. But on the whole, there's enough supply. There's certainly more supply than what we had 2 years ago. So we're in a better place. We're just at a much higher price point.
All right, well, I'm going to point out one thing. Everybody in this room uses fern strips.
Mm-hmm.
You're the main provider of fern strips in the state of Florida. Everybody's wanting to know why are we having to pay so much for fern strips. In fact, if you've looked at the price of a fern strip, it's been out, but John, it's about as much as the 2x4 used to cost.
Yeah.
What's going on with fern strips? Are you just lining your pockets?
Where's the exit? Yeah. Furring strips are ripped from a 2x6, all right? 2x6/8 and 2x6/10s. You've kind of got a couple of factors, and I can actually tie this all the way back to OSB and plywood in a weird way. So it's amazing to listen to all this because all these things are somehow related. It's like this knot that every time you pull on it, it's just you're still tied up. 2x6/8 right now, random lengths is sitting in my lap. Number 2 are at $1,070, $1,000. 2x6/10s at $1,200, $1,000. By the time you buy that material, send it to a reman, pay a reman fee, freight it back down here, treat it, and then ship it to a dealer, you have a pretty expensive 1x2. The other challenge there is that 2x6 is traditionally you're going to get some downfall, and you can make a furring strip out of a 2x6 number 3 or number 4. I would advise against the number 4, but it's doable. The problem with that is that sawmills over the last decade or so have optimized. And the amount of downfall they get is far less than what it was back then. So there really is not a lot of 2x6 low grade to play with.
So I want to make sure everyone understands. Before they upgraded their technology, there used to be a lot of drops, stuff that cut off, and you'd cut it up into 1x2s.
Exactly right.
That's not happening no more. So you're actually having to buy 2x6.
You buy a higher grade. That's right. When you can. Now the other piece of this, I said it relates to that. I mean, there are some 1x2s that are imported from South America. And I don't know if we have any fencing contractors in here, but fencing is an extremely tight supply. That's not going to change anytime soon. That's actually a lot related to plywood. You've got this OSB shortage. You've got the plywood market running hot. The logs that are used in Brazil to manufacture fencing, 2x3s, 1x2s, those types of items are also used to manufacture plywood. And those guys can pay 5 times as much for that same log to manufacture plywood to then import it to the U.S., which in turn forces us into the domestic market. Now, you don't have a lot of domestic fencing producers, which is why you don't see an alternative. The alternative on the 1x2 side, and it really wasn't a lot. It was probably 20-30% of the total supply, but that's a chunk, and that's just forcing that 20 or 30% to go domestic, and it drives your cost up.
All right. Jim, one thing about your expertise, you understand the steel markets. Excellent, both local, domestic, and foreign. Can you give us, in your view, what's going on with these steel markets, so to give us a better understanding, and from your view, what are your pressure points?
Sure, thanks. So I've actually been in the steel business for over 35 years. I started out as inside sales in the steel mill, and then I worked into processing, international trading. I've owned part of a steel mill, a mill called Optimus Steel in Beaumont, Texas. And I've never seen the steel market operate like it has today. If you go back to 2000, up to 2008, before we had the big collapse on the real estate market, the steel market was crazy hot then, but I've never seen it the way it is right now. And part of the reason fundamentally is, over the last 3-4 years, just like Don said on some other markets, there has been consolidation in the steel industry, both on the long products, when you think about rebar, wire rod, and also on flat rolled. People like Commercial Metals have bought Gerdau on the rebar side, both their mill and their downstream fabrication. A company by the name of Cleveland Cliffs bought out ArcelorMittal, which is the largest steel producer in the world, bought out their U.S. flat-rolled and long products their flat-rolled operations. U.S. Steel bought out Big River. So there's been a lot of consolidation. So the mills, where there used to be a lot of undiscipline in the marketplace, chasing volume, they are now chasing shareholder return. They're out after the dollar versus going after the volume. And that's important because a steel mill consumes itself. Steel mills are high speed, high temperature, and they consume themselves. So besides COVID, that's had the same operational issues for everybody here on labor, steel mills consume themselves, and they have to have planned outages to make sure that they stay operating. In the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year, there were some planned outages and there were some unplanned outages. Keystone, which is now called Liberty Steel up in Peoria, they lost their transformer. If you lose a transformer, it's like losing a transformer in your neighborhood. They can replace that like in a half a day. A transformer in a steel mill is down for like 3 to 6 months, right? So they can bring billets in, but if you don't have billets, then you can't run the mill. So there has been shortage because of COVID, labor-related issues, but there's also been impact because of planned and unplanned operational stoppages, On top of that, if you go back to, on the fundamentals, under President Trump, he implemented, if everybody remembers the term 232. So the 232 was put together for national security. That was the justification for it, which was a good one. And being in the steel side of the business, I was happy that he did it. But the 232 put tariffs of 25%, and in the case of Turkey, 50% when the Turkish lira devalued. So it made for every piece of steel that wanted to come to the United States, they had to pay a 25%, and in the case of Turkey, a 50% tariff to bring in the United States. Put that on top of anti-dumping, which says that a country is selling their product in the United States at a lower than home market or cost, or countervailing, which means it's being subsidized. When you look at the 232, the countervailing, and the anti-dumping suits, imports have a significantly less share of what they've had in the past. As an example, wire rod used to be in the past historically had between 45 and 55% market share of the rod market in the United States. It has less than 10% today. Okay? Same thing on rebar. Rebar was probably as much as maybe 18 to 20%, and it's less than 4% now. So on top of that, most recently, outside of the trade restraints that's limiting it, because of what's happened from a global perspective, there has been most recently cancellation of about 38 to 40,000 tons of rebar and wire rod that was coming in from Algeria and Turkey into the southeast. So that's put a big push on the supply side as it relates to the long products. When I think about what are the things that are going on,
Can you talk a little bit about recent pricing?
yeah, I think it's scary. Well, Julie talked about this from a nickel standpoint. I'll talk a little about what's happened most recently prior to Ukraine, because I know you're going to have a question about that. Prior to Ukraine, the mills were raising prices. About a week ago, they raised price on rebar $40 a ton. So $40 a ton equates to, on a number 5 rebar, roughly around 45 or 50 cents a stick, a 20-foot stick. So they've been very disciplined in their pricing moving forward. I would also tell you with where energy is, and I'll bring this back probably a little bit to Ukraine as well, the price of West Texas being above $128 a barrel is having a big impact on diesel. All the steel mills today have now implemented fuel surcharges. So every product that comes into our door is having a fuel surcharge of between 5 and 8%. And talking about what Julie said, a lot of the downstream products, she mentioned it, but in the past, the U.S. market used to be, the wire rod use market used to be around 10 to 11 million tons, and that's because all the wire products were made here in the United States. You think about galvanized hanging wire, you think about shopping carts, you think about nails and fasteners. All that moved overseas so that the wire rod market became only roughly around 5 or 6 million tons. Well, all those products being overseas, that now has come into the United States through, whether it's a domestic producer like ITW or ITW Pazload brings that in from overseas. Now with the container freights the way they are, just like Julie said, there's two things. It's the timing to get the material, and therefore we as a distributor, we either have no material in inventory or we overbuy to make sure that we have it. And all of our orders are probably, just like everybody here, are at least 6 months to a year late, every one of them. So it's been a real challenge, I think, overall for managing the supply chain. One thing I would say too, is not a steel perspective. With West Texas being above $125 a barrel, it's going to have an impact on resins and plastics. So think about anything that poly is going to go up. If not tomorrow, it's going to go up next week.
Thank you, Jim. Mike Chavis, we're going to hit, if you'll keep that on for me. We're going to talk just a minute about other scopes, then we're going to go back to this panel. Mike Chavis, come on up here. Mike is window manager for Romac Building Supply. We want to talk a little bit about lead times. We also, I probably had the darndest call I ever had last week from a major window provider that started out with the letter M and ended with I. They called us and said, hey, we want to try to rearrange and put some orders in place. And at the current time, this window supplier's lead times for how many weeks?
We were averaging 24 to 36, depending on windows or doors.
Well, they said, hey, look, we can maybe move some of your orders up. Well, the reason why they're moving orders up, and I think this is going to allude to what you guys said, the representative from the company said they have 16 trucks, semi-trucks, stranded in Florida that can't be unloaded, and they have 24 at their plant that can't be shipped by people who ordered products, committed to products 24, 40 weeks ago, and said now they're not ready, nor can they pay for it. And we have found out that it's sort of becoming an emerging trend that because the lead times are so long out, and the issue of cash. For example, Romac Building Supply, we've had, what, Dan, $8 or $9 million more in inventory in the last year, right? And out cash to buy material. A lot of these companies don't have the wherewithal to do it. So they've actually told us, and this is where it's going to get a little tricky for builders. You may have your window company, say they're stocking that window, they're going to say, hey, our lead times are 35 weeks. And you could come to us and we say, well, you know, we're 12 weeks. And the reason why is they're not going to ship these other companies their upcoming orders until they take their old ones. In fact, most of them are being put on hold, what we're told. I wanted to have that conversation to show you how weird this market's getting. That's one of the god-awfulest calls I've ever got. But for us, we're actually moving orders up, which will help. Mike, talk about other vendors and what the lead times are and what you're seeing.
Like I said, the average lead times are running, I'm not going to say the brand, but average is going to be 24, 26 if you're doing stock. If you're doing anything architectural, you could be 35, 40 weeks. Doors are running 34 to 36 weeks on certain vendors. Some are running 50 weeks. Now, based on the conversation we had with the vendor last week, they did say curtain people were on 30-week lead times. Those people were going to be moved to 56 weeks because they didn't take their material. So that gives us an idea or a chance to move ours up. PGT, of course, if you're buying them, they're in the 50s. Back orders are being a big deal. Aluminum is a problem because they told us to go ahead and buy that as well. So if you're buying any mold bars, understand you need to stock up on those. Or the people you're buying from needs to stock up because there's going to be a shortage of those.
That's right, because Russian oligarchs control most of the aluminum supply in the world. And there's going to be an issue with aluminum, and we're moving rebar up. We're moving mold bars. You know, if you need it, 2-joint windows, if you don't have the mold bars, the windows do no good. And plus patio doors.
So like you said with molds, those have to be done. People don't look at those sometimes. They just look at the windows. A lot of you in here, a lot of our customers do vinyl windows. They do aluminum doors. That aluminum's going to fall in the same way as your mold bar is going to be. So we have stocked up. We're doing a stocking program. We started months ago. We're going to keep on hand at any given time, 1,500 to 2,000 windows. we've got probably 150 to 180 stock doors, aluminum. I've got a couple of vinyls, but we'll be carrying 5068, 6068, and 8068 doors in the aluminum product.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we're going to ask Jim Chappitt to come up, but while he's coming up, guys, how many of you have decreased your inventory in the last year?
From a dollar perspective.
Well, yours has because you can't get it. Sorry about that.
From a dollar perspective, yes.
Yeah, you don't have an inventory problem, do you? Don, any idea how much your inventory's gone up?
More than doubled.
More than double. How about you, Jarrod? More than double. Julie? You're the only one.
It depends what it is, because we're in
Depends on what
multiple
month.
different categories, but yeah.
This is Jim Chappitt. He's our manager of garage doors. He's going to give a brief overview of what's garage doors. We've got real concerns because still issues, and Jim's going to give you a brief update on garage doors.
Garage doors are currently running for just a standard door, 13 to 15 weeks on lead time. It ranges into the premium series, go as far as 20 weeks out, and that's mainly for your standard stuff. We have some things that when you get into specialty, if you're high lifting a door, vertical lifting a door, following a pitch, or if you have a special size, it can run out even more. We've got an order currently that we've been waiting on, was supposed to be here, and it's late in April, just got bumped to June. Okay, and then the other thing is with springs, spring steel has been on allocation. They changed it somewhat from one of our spring suppliers. We were at a 1,500 pound allocation, and that got moved to 2,500. But with the aluminum issues, that's where we can run into a problem, because all of your springs have cast aluminum cones on each end of them, and the doors, overhead garage doors, are lifted with cast aluminum drums. So that's kind of an issue there. The other thing is aluminum retainer on the bottom of the door. So those are that, I mean, that's the aluminum, end of it there. But the steel, the garage doors are made from cold rolled steel, and unfortunately the garage door industry and the pecking order is kind of at the bottom of the pecking order, because your automobile industries and your military are at the top.
And Jim, I want you to talk real quick. A lot of builders get frustrated over price increases in garage doors. Jim, tell us, before all this happened, what type of notice you would get on garage door price increases, and tell us what type of notice you're getting now on garage door price increases.
Prior to this situation, we were getting a price increase notice 3 months ahead of time, 90 days, maybe even 120. Then it started getting shorter and shorter. Then it turned into, on Thursday I got a notice, Friday the price changed.
And that's the other thing that's happening with a lot of vendors. When they change your price, it's everything price, time of shipment. You may have placed an order 3 months ago. That's going to be the price if it hadn't shipped.
And then, of course, you got trucking. Trucking's an issue for everything. These folks have the same issue with trucking. Through December, we don't ever order anything less than a truckload, okay? In December, I was receiving partial trucks. I received 4 partial trucks. So I'm calling my vendor going, hey, what's going on? I don't order partial trucks. Well, we're having trouble getting people to show up because of the weather to build the product. Now, I've been doing this for 40 years. In 40 years, I've never heard that. I've never heard problems with trucking because of a storm or an ice storm, but that's what I get now.
And we actually had a few truckloads of garage doors come in with a full load of garage doors in one spring.
What do you do with the 4 panels on the garage door and no hardware?
Okay.
We get that too.
Well,
So, you know, we take, and what we've done is we stock springs for service type work. So what we would do is we would take those springs to try and complete the order, do whatever we can to complete the order, to take care of everybody. Because we know also that, you know, it has to do with draws with contractors and things like that.
yeah.
If a lot of banks won't give a draw until the garage door is installed.
Right. Thank you, Jim. And last but not least, probably the person you least don't want to talk about. This bald-headed fellow is Harry Muir, and he's our truss plant manager. And you know, trusses are so plentiful.
Yes, they are. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm the manufacturer. Everybody else up here is looking for the manufactured product to be shipped to them to then get out to you. With my situation, with any manufacturer, we have labor, we have raw material. Our raw material is broken into 2 sections, which is lumber and plates. Our plate supplier to us put us on allocation last March, and we've been on allocation ever since.
And let me make this point. The allocation was based on sales from 2020 during the pandemic.
Correct. So
And
they
we-
went ahead and upped this 13% on something that was already kind of low to start off with.
That was drastically low from 2020.
Correct. And they said that that would be fine because it's only going to be for about 6 months. So we go on allocation March of last year, and come September, so we should be coming off. So what does that mean? I get on the schedule, I push things out like any other manufacturer does, and I say to the customers, hey, you know, wait with us, we'll be better in September, October. And then we find out in July, no, it's going to be the end of the year when you come off of allocation. Okay, so then I go back to the customers again. Basically, my customers are 25 salespeople in Romac. So I go back to the salespeople and say, hey, we're going to put you off again over to the first of the year, and this is our capacity. At the same time, we are trying to get labor up. We're trying to start a night shift and really get into it, and we can't get labor.
And I want to sort of touch on this.
Yes.
If we could have hired the people and we put on a full night shift, we would have ran out of plates within a couple of months, and everybody in the plant would have been laid off for a time period. And we started, Romac, we went to this event with a lot of plates on the ground. We probably had a $300,000-$400,000 investment in extra plates
easily.
on the ground.
Right.
And but we have to control our plate and production, because if we get beyond that, we're out. The other issue about labor, years ago we were paying for temporary labor $14.50, $15 an hour.
Yeah, definitely.
The new rate we're paying now is $25.50 to work in the truss plant.
Correct. Now that's that's the labor rate. You are correct. So we started the night shift, and we couldn't add on because of our plate issue. Then we were promised, okay, it's going to be the end of the year. If not, then it moved to the beginning of the year, and now we're being told it's the third quarter of this year. So we're constantly moving things off. We're constantly disrupting contractors, unfortunately. We have negotiated a slightly larger increase of allocation of plates, which should start hitting the end of this month into next month. Now, the reason for that was because we're trying to automate our plant. Half of our plant's being automated to automatic tables. The pucks will automatically set. It'll be a faster speed. We're anticipating about 33% increase in production of that part of the plant, which means I need more plates. If I don't have plates, I can't continue to build. So they've agreed to that. So we got some bright spots that are coming. Labor has gotten easier to get right now versus 6 months ago, but we're still managing that and watching it. Labor rate's gone up twice over the last year, where just to keep people into the plant. We have bonus incentive programs that we use to keep people into the plant and make sure that, hey, they're all safe and secure. It wasn't until about a week and a half ago that we've stopped for 2 solid years taking temperatures of every person walking through the door at our manufacturing plant. Even though COVID's been going up and down, we've been trying to keep our employees as safe as possible. It has snuck into the plant at times, and at that time, we'll lose 1 or 2 teams, we'll lose 2 or 3 saws, something like that. We unfortunately, fortunately for us, Don's led the whole company through the COVID issue with sanitation, with masking, with social distancing, and we've done a very good job. The unfortunate thing is that you can't tell everybody to do something and they all do it. Unfortunately, one of our truck drivers did pass away this past year. With that, that's the only death that we've had in the company, and it hit everybody pretty hard.
The only other thing about the truss industry, and they're going to allude to some of this, is the equipment. In 2000,
Right.
up until about 2001, truss plant equipment remained the same for about 30 years. 2001 hits, 2003, that boom area, they went to the first generation of truss saws and equipment. We have the crash for the last 10 or 12 years. That equipment has become obsolete. We had saws that we bought in 2005. In 2012, we could not get parts from that. We got the last servo motor flown from Israel for a saw. So everybody's having to retool their truss plants, and truss plant equipment is out how far?
Oh, truss plant equipment's out over a year right now.
13 to 16 months.
Yeah, we're out.
The other issue, and
get
Don,
this
you mentioned this to me, thank you, Harry, I'm going to bring Don into the other issue affecting trusses locally. You've had I think a consortium of national builders or other folks buy truss plants in Jacksonville and Orlando, and we just had another builder buy a truss plant down south. I'm going to be honest with you, a builder buying I'm going to say it now, how can I say this? My Mississippi won't come. A builder buying a truss plant is like a priest buying a whorehouse. They don't know what they're doing. Let me explain, and I know that's Mississippi talk, but you can ask that young man over there. It is so real easy to lose a lot of money in trusses. It's so easy. Trusses is one of the most difficult scopes to be profitable because it requires it requires a specific scope of work. So I'm concerned the truss capacity is not expanding because builders are buying it up. And what are you saying, Don?
Well, there's several things happening. One, because of the issue of getting trusses, people are getting desperate. So they're doing desperate things and reaching out beyond their expertise in business, which is always going to be a problem. The other issue is we're seeing people go back to conventionally framed roofs. When they can't get trusses, they're framing with I-joist, they're framing with 2x12s. And a lot of that skilled labor that knows how to do that simply doesn't exist today.
Do you have the I-joist?
We do have some I-joist, yes.
Okay. So that gives you a sort of view of the market. Now we're going to talk about some very specifics. We alluded to this, oil pricing and transportation. Tell me what the impacts on each one of your businesses can be. I'll start with you, Don.
Well, fuel prices are huge. Obviously, we all know when we fill up our cars, diesel prices are approaching and have cracked $5 at the pump. The single largest line item on my P&L is delivery expense related to fuel for trucks. We run a fleet of 900 trucks. As I mentioned earlier, I delivered about 7,000 truckloads of material last year in Central and South Florida. So you can imagine what my fuel bill is to fill up every one of those trucks every day. So with that, we have to raise prices, not only on the outbound freight, but on the inbound. As these folks alluded to, we're getting fuel surcharges from just every manufacturer. They've gone from $100, $120, now they're $250, $300, all indexed back to the fuel price. So between inbound freight and outbound freight, fuel is going to impact our costs tremendously.
But there's also the other issue. I've already seen the first notice. It's Julie and Don on shingles. You both sell shingles. We're seeing 8 to 12% almost immediate increases or announced quick increases in shingle costs, plus fuel surcharges increases on all shingle trucks. All right, what's your expectations of fuel costs on shingles and ISO board and stuff like that? ISO board's been a mess.
So ISO board, for all the years that ISO board, polyiso and ISO board. First of all, ISO board, roofing ISO board is 1 year out. TPO, 1 year out. ISO board is being sold on allocation quarterly, if you can get it. And that goes with our relationships, negotiating until we're blue. Hey, can you give me 5 more trucks? We are seeing charges from suppliers like transportation charges and supply charges. What used to be $300 on a truck is now $550 and $200 out of nowhere. To answer your question about roofing, I'm going to state right now, less than 60 days, there's a price increase. That'll happen again. I think every one of our suppliers are going to either raise their fuel surcharges, that's an absolute, implement more, and I think you'll see us put fuel surcharges onto our loads for the exact reasons that Don just expressed. For 1 minute, I'd like to go back to price increases, and I would like everybody to know here in this room that Romac's commitment to having inventory is very robust. It's not unlike Don to say, I'll take 25 trucks of something. But what's going on with manufacturers when they announce, let's say they give it to us the last week of March, and they say, price time of shipment, any order going in, shipped after May 1st, is going to have the new increase price. Guess what their lead times are? 8 weeks. You aren't going to get a truck in prior to that. So nobody's playing games. This is real world right now. Lead times are extended, and we have to prepare and plan.
You know, and I think you allude to right now, the people who are winning are the folks who understand the market.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is not amateur hour time.
No.
From your standpoint, how's the shipments from Masonite and Huttig? Are you hearing from the door side and the molding sides? I know on the container side for moldings, you're probably feeling the same pain on containers, but from the trucking side, what are you seeing at Huttig?
Yeah, I'd say, we have our own fleet as well that we run. But yeah, from our vendors, I'd say Inconsistency, where before they were like clockwork, to have them at your doorstep when you were expecting them, and just doesn't happen anymore. And then then take the cost out of it, right? So the surcharges, I think we're still trying to digest really what's going on in the world right now to what the impact's going to be. I don't think we truly have executed that yet.
Well,
I know we haven't. So, I mean, that's coming.
And Greg, you were talking about the consistency of not knowing. I had a customer tell me that they were waiting on some doors, may have came from you, I'm not sure. And they said that they've been told every week these doors are going to arrive. And maybe you told them that these doors would arrive, and they didn't show up. Explain to people in here, you're not lying to them, but what's causing this bad information? Because first when someone says, "Hey, this store's going to be here next week," and it doesn't show up, what's usually happening?
Well, it could be a lot of times we won't know what's shipping on that truck until the truck actually leaves the vendor. We might think we know what's going to be on the truck or what we've ordered, but we don't get a confirmation until it's actually on the road.
And that's the bingo. That's what a lot of people don't know that's changed in the last year and a half. Not only their scopes, but we, in windows, Mike has no idea. He'll have an acknowledgement date of 3/9 that this is supposed to come in, and they won't know until it's actually shipped what's on the truck. Yeah, we were supposed to have a truck today. We were supposed to have a truck last Thursday, and it come to Monday. Yeah. So are those the things happening to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's what's on the truck, and then the other part is when is the truck going to show up? So there's those two variables there.
Now, Jarrod, you're in the pine business, and the pine's grown in the South. But you even have trucking problems with this thing called fruit season and vegetable season.
We do.
Tell us about what happens this time of year in Florida.
Well, we actually had a meeting just yesterday about rates. So whether that's done via fuel surcharge, increasing the base rate, it'll probably be a tiered rate change based on mileage. I mean, we cover out of this plant up to Jacksonville down to Key West. We do have a sister company, Greenbush Logistics, that runs about 300 trucks of our own, not to mention what we broker. We have 26 of those trucks actually based out of the terminal here. And so we'll see the fuel cost impact our P&L, just like you alluded to. And it is much more on the L side than the P. So that will continue to happen. And I don't know exactly what that impact is going to be on a dollars per thousand basis, on a truckload basis, like you alluded to over there. We're in the really early stages of this, but it did not take long to have that meeting. I mean, again, quite literally just yesterday, we were sitting there kind of digesting these rates, where we're at, and carriers are coming to us. We've got probably 6 to 8 carriers based out of our yard. They drop their equipment, they run for us, they're dedicated to us. Generally speaking, they're going to take the longer lanes. You know, our trucks are going to stay within 150 miles. We're going to bring them back and turn them as often as we can. So these are the guys that are running to Miami. They're running to Key West. And their freight expense overnight went up quite substantially. So it's not surprising to hear them in our ear. And we're going to do what anybody has to do in this environment. We're going to do our part to take care of them. If we don't, then we will fail to service our customers. And that's not an option. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can about it. We're going to try to make sure they're taken care of, and unfortunately, at some point, that has to be passed along as well.
Jim, what's freight doing to your group?
Well, I think in general, same comments that the folks here have said. It's at an increase on cost. It has an impact on the delivery schedule. But I guess I'd like to take it back fundamentally a little bit. The trucking industry's been a challenge for a long time. And there's a lot of articles that are saying there's going to be over 350 to 400,000 drivers that are going to retire this year because of their aging out, because of the electronic logs and that type of thing. I've got an interview this afternoon with a guy who is an independent. You talked about brokers. There are a lot of guys that are now, they're going to put their trucks sitting on the road because they can't make money. At diesel going over $5 a gallon and the insurance costs that they have, they just can't make money. So a guy I'm interviewing this afternoon, he took his truck up to Chicago, he dropped it off at the lease place, took a rental car back, and he's going to come work for us. Because an independent can't make money with the rates they are today. So the problem that we're going to have going forward is not just the rates, but it's going to be the people that are driving the trucks.
If I can allude, talk to that point. So last year, we have 26 trucks dedicated out of our facility. For about a year and a half, maybe a year, we struggled to find 26 drivers. We really struggled. I mean, we were 20, 22, 23, 20, 24, 25, 20. I mean, it was just constant. And we had to go back to the drawing board, change our pay structure, change our model to be able to compete with the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world. And so, yeah, there's a lot of upward pressure, not just with fuel, but with wages.
All right, last question, and then hopefully we'll have a minute if someone wants to ask a question. For each one of you, what do you see the next 3 to 6 months in your supply chains, and what do you fear most? What's something out there that you see that say, this could be a big problem? And if you want to talk, if you have any idea what you think the Ukraine impact will be, Don.
Well, I think we're in for more of the same through 22 and probably into 23. I don't see supply easing up. Across the state of Florida, my customers are booked out through this year into next. I don't see any easing of housing unless housing starts to drop off dramatically due to some event that we all can't even fathom or don't want to fathom. My biggest fear is supply from what's going on overseas. Most of the scrap metal comes from Russia, or a lot of it comes from Russia and Ukraine. And that's going to impact so many of your businesses, whether it's windows, whether it's doors, whether it's rebar, whether it's nails. That's a real concern. Some of the implications of oil can really drive costs into business that we don't even want to think about, when we look at the inflated prices of today. That's probably my biggest concern. But as far as what I see in my crystal ball, it's more of the same, more shortages, and it's going to be a challenge for us all.
Do you see it continue like we've seen it the last year or so, where we have one item this month and it's going to hit some?
we have 10,000 SKUs across many, many product categories, and every one, you can substitute the product. I can cross it out and put insulation, I can put LVLs, I can put OSB, I can put any product in there, and it's the same discussion. And I don't see that getting any better because there just isn't enough supply that can be ramped up quick enough to really respond to it.
Greg, you probably got, honestly, you've got one of the trickiest parts with doors. Where do you see this door thing heading, and what do you fear, and do you see any effect of this Ukraine thing in the door area?
Yeah, I'll start with the Therma-Tru door, exterior door side of the business. Therma-Tru is, they manufacture all their product domestically. Their supply channel currently is pretty good. So that's a positive thing. The management team they have is the same management team that was running the place when they were running like a top, meaning they were one of the best servicing vendors I knew of in the industry. So I have all the confidence in the world they know what needs to be done and how to do it. Now, when you're dealing with labor, and we've all talked about all those issues, it's just an unknown, right? But they're doing things to incentivize and bring people in. They're even talking about relocating manufacturing in other parts of the country. So it's going to be taken care of. It's just a matter of when. And it's really a difficult thing to put your finger on. With exterior doors, like I had mentioned earlier, at the beginning of April, we'll know what May's going to look like. And that's how I have to look at it. And we all have to look at it. It's a short-term outlook. I don't think we can look too far out because you have to expect the unexpected in the world we're in today. And just learn to adjust. And that's what we're trying to do.
Julie, you're dealing with a lot of imports, and I think you have the biggest fears because truly so much of your business is relying on imports.
It is. In my role today, we have a department called BMG, Building Materials Goods, or Building Materials Group, however you want to do it. In Florida, I'm responsible for $40 million of what we call commodity items. We don't do wood. Not one vendor has told me it's getting any better. They've all said to me it's going to get tighter. So roofing, insulation, drywall, weatherproofing, ventilation. These are things that are going to get tight domestically that are still made here. On the fastener side of it, I didn't share earlier, a large branded product decided last week that they were going to step out of importing containers. I'll give you an example. I have a customer that has 84 containers on the books with them. Nothing that isn't on the water in 30 days will be filled. So collated fasteners in particular are going to be very tight. And I do fear the flow of product coming in. I would tell you that there's no more important time than to partner with a vendor. Listen to your vendor, and when your vendor tells you product is available, buy it if you have the wherewithal to do it.
Jarrod, you guys, this is spring season, and traditionally, this is the time of year that treaters make hay. First off, how does your spring season look, and what concerns you as you look over the next 3 or 6 months?
Yeah, so spring so far, we're really early on. March is traditionally our busiest year. It's been fine. It's been good, relatively flat with last year. I think March and April are fine. I think demand is there and we'll be okay. What concerns me though is not new construction. Right? We've all talked about demand versus supply. I mean, it's just we need homes. That's a little bit different. What concerns me is retail. I mean, a big portion of a treated lumber manufacturer's life is tied up in retail. The box stores are obviously the first thing that comes to mind. If you go back to 2020, before the pandemic, March of 20 was a very busy month. 16-foot standard decking, which traditionally speaking is a retail-oriented item, was trading at the mill level at around $500 a thousand. That's about $5 a stick. Last March, when we kicked off the spring, that same stick was trading around $950 a thousand. As we sit here today, it's $1,600 a thousand. And you can't buy it for $1,600 a thousand because you can't find it. And my concern on the retail side, and the reason we monitor it so closely, is that at some point, it will be too expensive for the person who's going in there to do a spring project, to build a deck or build a fence, and they're going to look at that and go, man, 3 years ago I could have gotten 3 boards for the price of 1, and you extrapolate that cost across the entirety of your project, and it gets pretty weighty. And then you tie in all of these other things, fastener costs and everything else that's rising. I think the biggest fear when you're in our shoes is that you have to have the inventory to support your dealers, but the inventory right now is as expensive as it's ever been. And if it starts to go south during your busiest month, it creates some real challenges. So be cautious.
I do want to hit on something because a lot of people in this audience don't understand this. And Don and Jarrod, just real quick, speak on it. There's a Random Links published pricing for wood commodities. There's a market on contracts, and then there's a cash market. Don, describe where the difference between these markets and how much more you pay in a cash market.
Well, that's a great question. For example, on OSB, it's $20 a sheet if you buy it on committed contract. I will take 4 trucks a week, and I will take 4 trucks each and every week. I also have customers that come in opportunistically, and they want to buy from me when it's available. And that price might be as high as $50 a sheet because I don't have but 1 or 2 trucks to sell, and I will get paid for the trucks I do have. My committed customers will get taken care of with a fair price each and every day. And on the open market, I just don't have a lot to sell, so I'll sell it what the market will bear. And it could be 2x the price of contract customers.
Jarrod, what are you seeing in the cash markets on pine?
It's similar. So, and we talked about 2x12s a lot. I mean, right now I'm sitting here looking at 2x12 16s. They're $1,500 print, $1,525 actually. I mean, if you call a sawmill right now, if you can find it, most of the time you can't. You may pay $1,825. You know, you may pay $7. I mean, so you're $200, $300, $1,000 over whatever's on this sheet of paper. And to your point about contracts, the way that we traditionally work in our industry is we have what we call adders on top of this base level, and everything in terms of our cost, our profitability is tied into that adder. Well, traditionally speaking, I mean, if you have a $200 or $300 adder, but you're now suddenly paying that premium at the mill before you ever put a truck on it to get it here, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that math. It doesn't work. So you alluded to PTS earlier, some other things. We've all had to adapt and change our programs to be a little more flexible just to protect ourselves.
Jim, real quick, sorry I interrupted you. What do you see the next 3 to 6 months? What's your biggest fear, and sort of tie-in is what's the Ukrainian thing going to do?
I would tell you, prior to what's happened with the CIS in Ukraine, crystal ball, I would think that some of the things that had happened from a labor perspective, interrupting the supply chain, would have resolved some of themselves going into the end of this quarter and into the latter part of the year. So I thought it would be where there was concerns in the past about supply chain having an impact on building a house, that would be somewhat mitigated towards the latter part of the year. You know, the Fed was going to raise their rates, so you'd be kind of an offset between there. Now what's happened between Russia and Ukraine has had just thrown everything to the side. I mean, a crystal ball is, you just can't even have a crystal ball. Don mentioned this, you know, steel is made in a lot of different ways. It's like making a cake. You got a different recipe for each different kind of grade. And Jim talked about the automotive. The automotive, they have to have clean steel to make automotive grade stampings. And that comes from pig iron and stuff that comes from Russia. Well, with Ukraine not being able to export pig iron, the prime grades here in the United States have gone up crazy overnight. So prime scrap bushlings, which the mills use to replace or augment some of the pig iron, have gone up over $100 a ton overnight. So last night, the rebar mills announced a $100 a ton increase effective March 8th, immediately on all orders, on all new orders. So $100 a ton on a number 5, grade 60, 20-foot stick, that's about $1.10 a stick. It just went up overnight. So, you know, I think that from a perspective, and then talked about aluminum. So the main producer and holder of nickel in the world is Norilsk, which is out of Russia. So in this last week, because everything, the London Metal Exchange, overnight, it went up over 250%. It went up to over $100,000 a ton for nickel. So they stopped the trading on the LME on nickel. So anything that's going to be stainless, think stainless appliances, think stainless nails, think stainless fittings, is going to go crazy. So my crystal ball said that things were going to kind of settle themselves out. I think this is a complete wild card, and you just can't really tell. I think the thing you have to do is to make sure we've said this to our customers, make sure you're communicating with your suppliers each and every day so that you collectively can navigate this the very best that you can. Because if you're going to do it on your own, you're going to be on an island. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can bring to the table to help you manage your business. If you work together, it's going to be much less risk, even in a still risky situation, but much less risk than if you try to do it on your own.
And I think a lot of you are doing what we're trying to do. We're trying to stock as much of the basic standard stuff so that we have product to sell. Where you really get in trouble is the specialties. True? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for attending our Builder Box Lunch Day. I want to thank our panel. Y'all, I appreciate the information. Thank you so much. We at Romac Building Supply know you have choices when you make decisions on where you buy your construction materials. We're so grateful that you give us consideration. The guys will be up here after. If you'd like to come talk to them, feel free to come talk to them. And once again, thank you for attending today. See you later.
Thank you all.